There's just no getting around the fact that when you see your father pass, you're next.
Hey, everybody, another episode of Dead Dads. Roger, were you excited about this episode?
Yeah, I was so excited for this episode because Dave is the lead guitarist for the band 5440. He was also one of the original members of the Matthew Good Band. When Dave learned that one of his bandmates had written a song about his dad's death, Dave took it as an opportunity to recompose it and put a little bit of a different sort of emotional spin on it, which he shares in the episode. You're going to want to check that out.
Sitting on the edge of Papa Canyon, I'm a piece of time too small to need. There's a sign that's hanging over me. Let me disappear and try again. I'm no prophet, but I've seen things.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting episode for me. Dave's relationship with his band and how they were there for him and gave him comfort, being a little bit older than him and having gone through this experience, I think is relatable because the idea that we're going through this alone can be really daunting. But there are others that are out there that have gone through this. Again, that's the main feature of this podcast, is that people are going through this. And the idea is that everybody needs to do more to reach out and talk to those in their immediate circle, in their community, their friend group, because we need to share more.
You know, a lot of guys kind of, mull things over in their heads, but some of us need to actually push it out into a creative product, which is actually one of the things that got me to do this podcast. Is I needed a creative output. And so actually talking to Dave really helped me reflect on how this show is helping me process my grief.
Hot take, this is our band.
We're calling it what?
It's rhetorical.
But we're here to help you laugh. It's the Dead Dads Podcast.
We got a great guest today. I'd like to introduce you to Dave Genn. So Dave, why would you decide to do a podcast about your dad's passing?
Our father was the central figure in our family, and it's been 12 years since his passing, but it still, in a lot of ways, feels like yesterday. And I think in those 12 years since his passing, I've gained a lot of insight in the mourning process, and hopefully I can help out people who are going through that right now.
So what was your dad's name?
Robert Genn. He was a Canadian landscape painter. He was supported his family by painting thousands and thousands of paintings in his life, and supported his family with his art.
And was that here in Vancouver?
Yes, I was born and grew up in White Rock.
And so he did as well, or where was he born?
He was born and grew up in Victoria, and then they moved to White Rock Crescent Beach, and he had a studio attached to his house. You know, he worked from home every day.
So he was home a lot when you were growing up?
Yes, both my mom and dad were home when we went to school and when we got home.
That's not always the case especially in that age group.
Our generation is, we're the latchkey kid generation, the Gen Xers. And I didn't realize at the time what an outlier we were, but I recognize it now.
And you said your dad held everyone together. What does that mean?
He was very much the figurehead of the family. He was very involved in all three of our lives growing up. We were very nurtured in the arts, our father being an artist. My sister is a visual artist. Her name is Sarah Genn. She's a painter. And my brother is a television and film director, producer.
And he got a chance to see you as well. I'll get into the sort of family business.
I picked a business, playing in rock and roll bands, you kind of peak in your late 20s.
Yeah.
and then you hang on for dear life after that. My brother and sister picked fields where you come into your own in your 50s, really, or later. And so, my dad kind of missed my brother and sister's careers really sparking. They were on their way, but they've attained some great success since his passing.
Well, what do you think you would say about it now?
Oh, he'd be so proud.
Do you talk about that a lot with your sibling?
Oh, all the time.
And how much does the emotional side of it factor into your music?
He shows up in songs more than he shows up in dreams. I wish he showed up in dreams more.
Have you had him in dreams?
He has shown up, but I don't remember a lot of my dreams. Unfortunately, I wish I remembered more, but he has shown up several times.
And like throughout the period, or was it more concentrated towards the beginning?
No.
I seem really enamored with this. We've had this conversation before.
with other guests.
Our mom has passed as well, and you want to see them in your dreams, obviously, because when you see them in your dreams, you see them in their prime. You don't see them in those last few days or those last few weeks or those last few months. You see them, when you're a kid or when they were their strongest. So I do remember one dream that he showed up, and I told my sister that Dad had visited me last night. And she said, "What did he say?" And I said, he said everything's going to be okay.
So he gives advice.
He was an incredible advice giver. And that's one thing actually I've said to my sister recently as well, is that I really, we talk about how much we miss him. And I say, I really miss going to him for advice. And I really miss not just the solicited advice, but the unsolicited advice. And in hindsight, I wish I'd heeded his advice more and gone to him for more, because he was rarely wrong.
So as you were growing up, this is the sort of dad figure that you said the glue that holds you together, but he's in the role in the family, he's the one that people go to for advice.
Oh, yeah.
So your mom occupies a position, but his position is everybody kind of goes, "Hey, I've got something to check with you."
Yeah, I mean that generation, right? My mom was a homemaker.
How did he pass?
My dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He was given 6 to 9 months. And, my father was very much a workaholic. And when I say workaholic, I don't give that a negative connotation. When you're an artist and you love what you do, your work is play. When we got the diagnosis, he became very concerned with his catalog of paintings, the ones that were in storage, the ones that were out in galleries. He wanted to solidify all the works and catalog them so we knew what the family had in our possession. And it was an interesting thing because, our family had never talked about money. We never really discussed money. Then when he got the diagnosis and he started worrying about the family situation after his passing, it became a heated subject. I wouldn't say heated. It became a topic of discussion.
And maybe I missed that. So you said in 2013 he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, but the diagnosis was what? They gave him a timeline of how long? Was it?
They said 6 to 9 months. He lasted 7. Yeah, they were right on the money.
And when he did pass, you mentioned before earlier, you were all there.
He was at home, and the whole family was around him. Yeah, he was being held by his family.
What was that process like? Just from I can't believe this is happening.
The nice thing was that he had all his cognitive ability right up until the last couple of days. His body gave up on him, and the cancer spread into his lungs. And we had some scary moments where he was having problems breathing. We had to get him into the hospital, etc. But it was just in those last few days where he sort of drifted off and wasn't present anymore. We had some incredible conversations in those last 6 months.
You got the diagnosis. I just was going to ask you if that stops you and you start thinking, I need to spend more time with him. Like, do you start changing your life so that you can prioritize spending as much time with him as possible? Or
it's very difficult, right, to see your father, his body withering away. I remember being out with him and showing up at the house and going up to his room and sitting with him on the bed and saying, how you doing today? And he said, I'm just so sad today. And I said, Dad, you've had an exceptional life. Although it was average in duration, it was exceptional in content, in that you saw the world. You had, a loving family that's totally close knit. You had great friendships. You made thousands and thousands of people happy with your art. You've nurtured and educated and mentored other artists. You've had an incredibly full life. And he said, I know, I just feel that I have so many more paintings in me. I have so much more writing in me. He was mourning his creative life or the end of his creative output.
That's a real gift. I think, actually, I wouldn't say what you did for him, in my personal opinion, was a real gift, which was reassuring him, trying to help him feel something. Because I know my father, couldn't quite consolidate his feelings on an average basis as he was getting towards the end. But that sitting down and saying, hey, look, from my perspective, you've done a phenomenal job. I think that's a really kind thing to do. But I think it's a unique scenario to be in his situation and think, I have so much more work left in me, so much more of my personal gift to share with the world. That's a hard thing to try to process that, and a unique thing, not something I've heard very often.
We've got these tropes that we kind of follow, and like I should tell him more about this, or I should question him about that. But like, did you have friends or family or somebody who was kind of saying, hey, you should really make sure you spend more time doing this, or make sure you spend more time doing that, or did you just kind of let it all flow?
I found it difficult to spend extended periods of time at the house with him. And in typical fashion of our family, I went into a bit of a workaholic mode. And that took the form of my father was a writer for a long period of time, 10 or 15 years. He had a website and an email list, and he would write a couple of letters a week sent out to an email list about art. And he had always had this dream that maybe he would do like an audiobook, or what we would call now a podcast, where he would read these. He didn't like his own voice reading them. And when we got the diagnosis, I dove in. I made an audiobook of his letters, which we released to his email list. As I would read them and edit them and present them, I would send them to him, and he would sort of listen to them in bed at night. And I think that gave him great comfort. I think it was a really full circle moment for him for his oldest son to be reading his words back to him in his voice.
And you're using your art, right?
Well, I don't know if
that's how I see it.
I don't know if reading is art, but
you're emboldening him to use his voice and use his, like, you're taking his art and consolidating it. I think, again, I'm putting words in his mouth and yours, but from an outside perspective, it seems like you gave a voice to something that he was unable to do so.
When I saw how much it meant to him, it was really my gift to him. And I can't even remember how many I read, 40 or 50. Like I put a lot of time into it. And I think it was very fulfilling for both himself and myself.
Have you been able to listen to that since he passed?
No.
As a side note, I think you and your brothers and sisters should keep that newsletter going. That sounds really cool.
We did. We did for many years, and it's still available out there.
What's it called?
It's called The Painter's Keys.
Okay, so your dad passed. How old were you at the time?
45.
Yeah. Did you immediately get back into the work?
All three of us dove headlong into workaholism. But, my mom and dad had been together for close to 50 years. So there was a lot of sort of helping my mom with the adjustment.
So he passes. You're obviously the oldest, right? And so your mom is still alive at this point,
yeah.
And still?
Yeah, we lost her 4 years ago.
4 years ago. So did you have to occupy a position again as the oldest? Like, maybe there's an administrative burden that falls to you. Maybe there's a sort of, I'm the oldest, I have to take on a certain amount of responsibility for my younger siblings or for my mom. Did you feel that burden at the time? Or maybe it's not a burden. Did you feel that responsibility?
I think that responsibility is very much shared between the three of us. My sister is very nurturing and has a lot of control over her schedule. Being she doesn't have kids. So she's an artist, so she makes her own hours. So she was very, very useful in helping my mom adjust.
So you shared the burden in terms of the things that needed to get done.
Yeah, one of the things that was so surprising to me was I'll use one of my dad's words here, the rigmarole, worrying about all those things that happen when someone passes, from whether it be the memorial service to sorting out accounts or getting everything transferred into my mother's name. All those types of things are it's heavy work, and it takes years.
They don't make it easy, do they?
They don't make it easy. They don't make it cheap either.
No.
So who took that on, and is it still ongoing?
My sister manages his work, and we still release work into the marketplace. For the most part right now, we're holding on to what paintings remain in the family. Every once in a while, we pull the trigger and buy some of his art back. There was a painting that came up a year or two ago at auction, which was a painting of me as a child,
Aww.
as a toddler. And I'm like, okay, I got to have that one.
Where is that painting now?
It's on my wall.
What do you feel when you look at it?
Well, that one's there's a lot of, I'm the firstborn, so there's a lot of paintings of me as a little kid. Our house has got a lot of paintings of me as a little kid, but this one was an exceptionally good one that went out into the market, was sold and enjoyed, and then came back. I just think it's just it's a wonderful gift that, these paintings of myself, and there's paintings of my siblings as well. They're not commissioned by the family. They were done out of love and interest.
So you mentioned when he passed, you dove right into your art. Did your art change at all in that moment? Like, do you have a period when you look back at the music that your dad really influenced it, or at least his passing did?
The thing about losing your father is that there's a saying somebody said to me at the time, which is, a boy doesn't become a man until his father passes. And I could have really been happy to remain a boy, particularly since I play a boy's game in middle age. And there's just no getting around the fact that when you see your father pass, you're next, right? If things follow the natural order, and let's hope they do, because the alternative is unthinkable, there's no getting around the fact that you're next up. So I think that maybe that lit a fire under my ass a little bit to work harder, prioritize, my kids' growth, development, education.
It's a very common theme that we've heard so far, which is this idea that you're next.
You're next.
Processing of the responsibility that, hey, there's no accounting for it. And like you say, it's the best case scenario is that you're next.
Especially when it's cancer too, and there's that genetic aspect to it. My dad died of cancer as well, and I immediately just can't stop thinking about cancer.
I have this weird clock now, so I start thinking about I only have the amount of time left in my life that he had in his life.
I think about that all the time. My dad died at 78, which is the Canadian national average for Canadian males. My mom at 81, which is the Canadian national average. Let's face it, we're very average. And I'm at more average than most. So, logic would dictate that I've got 21 years if I live as long as my father did. I've lived harder, so I might be lucky to get to that stage. But
this is the stats game, though, that I think I've played too, which is, geez, I did these things that my dad didn't do, and maybe I have to take off a couple of years. But maybe I didn't drink quite as much. And I find it's a mathematical equation, which is realistically not based in anything logical. It's all up here.
What was the band like at this moment?
Like, I'm the new guy in the band. I've only been in the band 23 years. The band's been together for 45.
Is it 89 they started?
No, they started in 1980.
Great band, 5440. We have to call it out. It's a fantastic band.
Canadian greatness.
So the guys in the band are older than me. And so one of the interesting things that happened was that when my dad got the diagnosis, I had a gig that night in Victoria, and it was very tough. I went and played the gig, and then the next weekend we were out in Ontario, and we flew out to Ontario, and Matt, the drummer, and Neil, the singer, are both guys who had lost both their parents already. And they said, okay, we're going out. And they sat down and they sort of discussed the circumstances around their father's passing. Matt's dad dropped dead from a massive heart attack in his 50s. And Neil's dad had a horrible 2-year battle with cancer. And what I recognized was that in a lot of, and maybe I didn't recognize this until after the fact, but in hindsight, we were very fortunate that my father had a short battle. He was given an accurate timeline. And again, he had all his cognitive faculties right up into the last couple of days, which was nice.
As a workaholic, as your father passed, did you double down and work harder? But I think you're mentioning the band had capacity for grief because they'd gone through it. How did the immediate passing of him influence your ability to hide in your work or get involved in your work?
I think I just sort of jumped into a mode of like trying to find an angle to be the best provider for my family as possible.
Because I think as a more of an abstract question, as a template, like there are a lot of guys that reach this point. Their father's been given a diagnosis, and maybe it's a long time, maybe it's a short time, or their father passes, and you suddenly go, what am I supposed to do? Like, obviously there are tasks that are set out in front of you, maybe once he passes, but I think it's fascinating to learn what people decide to do. Some people become despondent. Some people dive into their work.
Reckless behavior is one as well.
And listening to people explain the rationalization of their process as they've been given this sentence, I think that's the most fascinating thing. So I think the question is, when you're presented with the diagnosis, and then as you go through it, how you're consciously deciding each day, like, today I'm going to deal with it by working, or tomorrow I'm going to deal with it.
I'll give you a good example. So there's a 5440 song called Crossing a Canyon. It's from, I think, 94. It was a hit single, not one of our biggest hits, but a popular song. And I had always found it an interesting song because the lyrics are very dark, but the chord progression is very bright. It's in D major. It's in a major key. It's got a major melody. It's a beautiful song, but I always thought there was an interesting dichotomy between the lyric and the melody and chords. And when my father was sick, I remember saying to Neil, who's the writer of the song, I said, what is that song about? Like, the chords and the melody are so bright, but the lyrics are very dark. And he said, oh yeah, so that's about my dad dying. And it's crossing a canyon. And he said, I remember very clearly taking him to his oncology appointment. And at this point, he's a shell. He's sitting in the passenger seat. It's pouring rain. The windshield wipers are going back and forth. And I said to my dad, his dad was a World War II veteran. He was one of those guys who kept his emotions, of that generation. Like, you don't talk about your feelings ever. And Neil said, Neil's an artist, so he's very in touch with his feelings. He said to his dad, Dad, I just want to say. And his dad just said, you don't have to say anything. I love you too. And that was the extent of the conversation. And Neil went home after that conversation. He wrote that song. And when he told me that, I went, oh my God, I never realized that song is about the passing of your father, but now it really resonates with me. So I immediately sat down and I changed all the chords into its relative minor key. And I sat down at the piano and I basically essentially made it a sad piano. I took the lyrics and supported it with a piano part that supported the lyrical content in a way that I felt was emotionally resonant. And then the guys came in for rehearsal and I said to Neil, listen, I've got this idea and you're either going to hate it or love it. But I don't think there's going to be a middle ground. So we sat down and we played it. He just sang it and I played the piano. We got all the way through the song and he said, oh my God, that's how that song always should have been. And from that spark of that idea, we actually made an entire record called La Différence, where we took the band's 10 best known songs and did rearrangements of. But that song was the motivator for that record. And it all came from this idea that Neil had written a song 20 years earlier about the passing of his father. And then when my father was passing, I really wanted to reimagine it in a way that resonated, where I could really make the lyrics resonated with me personally.
Both of the stories that you've shared, you've helped your father achieve his, goal of creating this podcast, and now you've taken this challenge that your bandmate Neil had and made it into something else. It really speaks to a sort of care.
Well,
I feel the care.
Band culture is one of collaboration. That's what I've done my whole life. So that's the qualities that I bring to any sort of creative situation is, how can I help your idea be better? How can I rely on you to help my idea be better?
How much of a role did the band play?
Especially since they've lost their dads as well, right?
Yeah, everybody had lost both their parents except for Brad, the bass player's parents, both outlived my dad. Because I've got bandmates who are 9 years older than me. And so they've gone through so many of the life experiences that I'm following in their footsteps. So, they had their kids, their kids are in their 30s now. My kids are teens. Their parents are passed before mine. They'd gone through all these experiences, right? So it was very comforting. And they're, again, artists very in touch with their emotions, don't have problems talking about them, and to put them into their art. It was very comforting having those guys.
Was it hard being away from your actual family?
We're not in the point in our career where we're going out for 5 weeks at a time anymore. We're out on weekends usually. So I don't think that was too much of a factor, because we were very much there to support my mother.
What does your grief look like now? I mean, I can imagine it changes over the years.
When friends of mine lose their father, I tell them what a friend of mine told me when I lost mine, which is, you're part of the club now. And this club is not one that you want to join. It's got an exclusive membership. But it is a club where you recognize other members and you recognize that loss and that space that is now unfilled. When friends of mine when they lose their father now, I tell them, this is a life experience that if we are lucky, we all get to experience. But I think about my dad every day. Every day he comes up in some form. And often it's like, oh, I just wish, I wish I could call him right now and say, what I should do about this, or, should I lock into my mortgage, or do you think I should, just go for the variable? Because nobody will give you a straight answer on that.
No.
I'll tell you another thing that I thought was interesting is that I found that in the first few days after his passing, I thought about the last few hours. And in the first few weeks, I thought about the last few days. And in the first few months, I thought about the last few weeks. But once I got into the first few years, I wasn't thinking about his decline anymore. I was thinking about him in his prime, like when I was talking about his, him coming to me in dreams. When he comes to me in dreams, he's in his prime. And now I very rarely think about those last 7 months. I think about the incredible adventures we had when, I was a kid or when I was in my 20s, the travel. We had, my father loved to paint on location. So he would travel a lot. He would keep these funky old vintage cars in Europe, and he would fly over to them, get in them, and drive around England for weeks and set up his easel on the side of a rocky hill and paint a castle. And he would often take one of his kids with him to tag along. And so, I think about those wonderful traveling experiences that we would have, as opposed to, his decline. When it first happens, you're still immersed in those last few hours or those last few days or those last few weeks, and the absolute horror show that is. But that in time, that fades into the background, and you just, you recall him in his best years.
I think that is such a comfort, because I know, we mentioned it's been a few years, but I know you think you're going to forever see them in their last days. You think that's just burned into your brain, and
well, it is still burned in.
But I have a picture too, which I keep, of my father in terrible condition as he was about to pass.
Yeah.
And occasionally, I don't know, I look at it just to try to shock me, and this idea that you can choose to go back and look at those terrible photos or those memories, but it doesn't sit behind your eyes every minute of the day, which I know is that feeling right as soon as he passes.
It's not my go-to. And it's not something necessarily that I feel you can control. But I'm thankful that it's not where my mind's eye goes.
Dave, this has been unbelievable to talk to you and learn more about your dad. I'm wondering, can you do us a favor and talk to the man out there who's going through this right now in the moment?
I don't want to say it gets better. It gets less. And when I mean less, I mean less often. The mourning experience is extremely painful. And as we were talking about before, like how people react to the passing of their father can be very, very different. I mean, I know from when my mom passed, it's a little clearer in my mind because it's only 4 years ago. I found myself incredibly apathetic. At the time I was teaching at a post-secondary institution, I had developed a curriculum for artists, and I was teaching it. And when my mom passed, I went to the head of school and I said, I'm going to take a sabbatical. I don't know if it'll be 2 months or maybe I'll come after Christmas. Maybe I'll never come back. I don't know. But you don't want me teaching right now because I don't care. I don't care about the students. I don't care about how they feel. I don't care about the curriculum. I don't care about their art. I don't care about their music. I don't care about their dreams. I just don't care. I was like really apathetic.
Or nihilistic almost?
Our generation is nihilistic in its very nature, right? I mean, that is the Gen X way is nihilism. Just look at our art of the 90s. Look at the movies. Look at look at Fight Club or Trainspotting. Look at Nirvana or the rave scene. It's all incredibly nihilistic. So that's built into the Gen X mindset, having lived, grown up in the cloud of the Cold War, and this idea that the missiles could fly at any moment. I don't think I became any more nihilistic, but I definitely became apathetic for a while. Now that's gone away. So I guess back to your original question, I feel that what I would maybe have liked to have heard from guys who had gone through the experience before me was that the hurt doesn't dull, doesn't get less painful, but it won't be all day every day. 9 years ago, I went to my 30th high school reunion. Now, I went to a boys' boarding school. A lot of guys went into finance. And I'd never gone to a reunion before. I just felt there was going to be a lot of guys with Rolexes talking about what car they're driving and how successful they are. And, I'm a lowly rock and roll musician. Didn't feel like I didn't want to get into that pissing contest. But what I realized, then I decided like I would go to my 30th. I didn't actually go to the reunion. I just went to the house party at the end of it. I wanted to make sure everybody was lubed up properly before I stuck it in. So you're seeing these guys you hadn't seen in 30 years. And within 2 minutes of the conversation, you say, so you married, you got kids. I always liked your mom, like, how are your parents? And all these guys had maybe lost a parent, maybe lost two, maybe they're dealing with sick parents. And I recognize, like, this is the great equalizer, right? Like, it doesn't matter what watch you got on your wrist. It doesn't matter what car you're driving. It doesn't matter how big your house is. Like, we're all going to end up in that same spot. And you're next. So, I found comfort in that. It's a
leveler.
Yeah, exactly. It's the great leveler is what it is. In actual fact, we have the biggest thing in common because it is really the event. I feel losing my parents is the event of my lifetime, along with the birth of my children. That's what I would say to the guys who are going through this right now is that it doesn't get easier, but it does get less often.
Well, it felt like he was here with us today for a little bit.
I'm a third generation atheist. One thing I recognized at the time was that I think that, and I remember saying this to a friend of mine, God, this would be a lot easier if I was a magical thinker. I talked to an oncologist friend of mine and he said, there's, I deal with believers all the time who are losing a loved one, and they seem, obviously they're sad and obviously they're in mourning, but it seems easier for them to believe that their parent has gone to a better place and they're watching over them. So when you are an atheist and the son of an atheist, and that your father's the son of an atheist, and you believe that what it looks like at the end is what it looked like before you were born, exactly the same, that's not very comforting. I take solace in the fact that, when I was explaining to my youngest daughter, Poppy, when Papa died, and she said, so how old was she? And then she was 4. And she said, where did Papa go? And I said, Papa lives in our hearts forever. I didn't try and explain heaven or the afterlife. It's like, he's right there.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for this. And thanks for our audience out there. Guys, we really hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Please check out the other episodes as well. Go to deaddadspodcast.com. We've got them all there, video, audio. And also, if you want to leave a message for us or want to tell a story about your dad, maybe you got an anecdote you want to share, we would love to feature it on a future episode. And of course, subscribe, review, all the podcasty things. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.
We have to go because we have to talk about mortgage rates.
Need my dad for that.
It's a weird, sad, funny path, but we're here to help you laugh. It's the Dead